Welcome, dear listeners, to English Podcast, where we journey into the heart of stories that linger, tales that explore the hidden landscapes of the human soul. Today, we step into the world of H.G. Wells, a name often synonymous with pioneering science fiction with journeys through time and encounters with the extraordinary. But Wells also possessed a profound insight into the more intimate, often melancholic dramas of everyday life. The story we bring you today is not one of Martians or invisible men, but of a far more personal and perhaps more haunting kind of mystery. It's called The Door in the Wall. It's a tale that whispers of lost Edens, of choices made, and opportunities perhaps tragically missed. It asks us to consider the relentless pull of ambition against the quiet, persistent call of an inner, almost forgotten joy. What is real? What do we sacrifice in our pursuit of what the world deems success? And what becomes of those fleeting glimpses of another, perhaps more beautiful reality? Our narrative is framed as a recollection told by a man named Redmond about his old school friend, the seemingly successful politician Lionel Wallace. So, settle in and let Redmond's voice guide you into Wallace's enigmatic and poignant life story. Some stories, you see, lodge themselves deep within your memory, not with the clamor of dramatic events, but with a quiet persistence, an echo of something profoundly, almost achingly human. They surface in quiet hours, colored by the light of one's own reflections. The story of my old schoolfellow, Lionel Wallace, and the green door in the white wall is such a tale for me. Wallace, by all outward accounts, he was a man who had conquered life. He moved with assurance in the corridors of power. His name was respected, his opinions sought. He had achieved what most men strive for: influence, position, a certain undeniable success. Yet, I recall an evening not long before his rather abrupt end, when the carefully constructed veneer of the public man, Lionel Wallace, MP, dissolved, revealing a soul haunted by an inconsolable longing. We were dining together, just the two of us, in a quiet club. The city hummed distantly beyond the heavy curtains, and it was there, amidst the clink of silver and the low murmur of other conversations, that Wallace, with a hesitation that bespoke a long-held, deeply guarded secret, began to speak of a door, a particular green door set in a long white wall, a door that had, he claimed, appeared to him at intervals throughout his life, offering a glimpse, a promise, of a world utterly different from this one. His account began in the misty realms of early childhood. He would have been no more than 5 or 6, a small, solitary boy living in a rather joyless West Kensington house. His mother he'd lost early. His father was a stern, prominent lawyer, a man consumed by his own ambitions and possessing grand, rather rigid expectations for his son. Young Lionel, left often to his own devices, would explore the nearby streets, his imagination his chief companion. And on one such solitary ramble, on an ordinary London afternoon, he turned a corner and found himself before it, a pristine white wall stretching along the pavement, and set within it a vibrant green door. He described to me, his voice dropping to a near whisper, even after all those years, an almost magnetic pull he felt towards it. Not fear, not then, but an intense, inexplicable desire, a profound sense of recognition, as if this door was an answer to a question his young heart had not yet learned to frame. He confessed, with a child's logic still echoing in his mature voice, that he knew from the very first instant that the door was unlatched, that it would yield to his touch. The struggle was internal, the deeply ingrained fear of his father's disapproval, the rules of a well-ordered childhood warring against this sudden, luminous call to the unknown. But the enchantment was too strong, the faint, sweet perfume of unseen flowers, a whisper of unearthly music. He pushed it open. The world he stepped into, as Wallace recounted it, was one of almost painful beauty and serenity. Not a wild, untamed nature, but an exquisitely tended garden, bathed in a soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. Flowers of hues he'd never imagined bloomed in glorious profusion, their fragrance intoxicating. Broad, smooth lawns invited bare feet. Strange, elegant trees cast dappled, gentle shadows. He spoke of graceful, brightly plumaged birds that sang melodies of pure joy, and of animals that moved with an astonishing tameness. 2 sleek, beautiful panthers, he recalled, played with him like kittens, their eyes wise and kind. There were other children there, children with radiant, happy faces and tall, slender, gentle-voiced people who moved with an unhurried grace, their expressions full of welcome and serene understanding. There was no harshness here, no demands, no recriminations, only an all-encompassing sense of peace, belonging, and unadulterated happiness. A tall, rather somber woman with kind, dark eyes approached him. She led him to a shaded seat and showed him a large, beautiful book bound in white. "This," she said, her voice like soft music, "is the story of your life." Wallace told me, with a catch in his throat, how he turned the pages. He saw pictures of his own nursery, his toys, his stern father. He saw moments from his brief past rendered with an astonishing clarity. And then, with a thrill of recognition, he saw a picture of himself, a small boy standing before a white wall and a green door, his hand outstretched to push it open. At that precise instant, as the image in the book merged with the reality of his experience, the vision shattered. The garden, the gentle people, the music, the light. It all dissolved like mist in the morning sun. He found himself not in that paradise, but back on the hard grey pavement of the London street. The white wall blank and featureless, the green door utterly gone. He was alone, heartbroken, weeping with a desolation so profound it felt as if his very soul had been torn. A passing policeman, perplexed by this distraught, well-dressed child, eventually took him home. His attempts to explain his adventure, to share the wonder of the garden, were met with stern disbelief from his father, who saw it only as a fabrication, a lie. The punishment for this wicked persistence, as his father termed it, was severe. It was Wallace's first brutal lesson from the world. That which is most precious, most magical to the inner eye, is often dismissed or even punished by those who cannot or will not see. And so the memory of the door, though unforgettable, was buried deep, overlaid by the necessary disciplines of growing up. Years spun by. The routine of school, the pressures of adolescence, the burgeoning demands of a promising intellect. The enchanted garden receded, becoming, as Wallace put it, like a peculiarly vivid dream. But the door, it seemed, had not forgotten him. He recounted to me, his voice tinged with the acute regret of a lifetime, the second time he saw it. He was a lad of about 13, a diligent student, hurrying through an unfamiliar part of London on his way to a particularly important school examination. He was anxious, his mind consumed with theorems and historical dates. And then, abruptly, it was there before him, the long white wall, the familiar beckoning green of the door. His heart, he said, gave a great leap. The memory of that lost paradise. The sheer intensity of its beauty and peace flooded back with an almost physical force. For a moment, he was that small, enchanted boy again, but only for a moment. The conditioning of years, the tyranny of the timetable, the fear of being late, of failing, of disappointing expectations, these were powerful wardens. He told me he remembered thinking, with a dreadful practical clarity, "I can't. Not now. I'll be late. There's the exam." The door, with its silent, profound invitation, became just another obstacle to his overmastering determination to get to school. He cast it a longing, almost agonizing glance, and then, with a sigh that seemed to tear something within him, he hurried on. He promised himself, as young people often do, that he would find it again, later, when there was time. "Later," Wallace said to me that evening, his voice heavy. "Later never truly comes for things like that, Redmond. Or if it does, we are no longer the same person who can receive its gift." The door, he explained, did reappear. Perhaps 5 or 6 times in his entire life, each time catching him unawares, each time presenting him with that same silent, potent choice. Once, he was a young man at Oxford, brimming with intellectual arrogance and the excitement of new social circles. He was on his way to a prestigious debating society, a speech meticulously prepared, his mind alight with arguments and ambitions. He saw the door down a narrow, sun-dappled alley. A flicker of the old magic touched him. But the debate was crucial, a stepping stone. "Next time," he resolved, "when I am more established." Another time, years later, he was already making his mark in the world of politics. He was in a hansom cab, deep in a discussion that could significantly advance his career, with a man whose patronage was vital. As the cab rattled over the cobbles, he caught a fleeting glimpse of it. The white wall, the green door, nestled between 2 grimy buildings in a forgotten part of the city. His breath caught. He half-formed the words to tell the driver to stop, but his companion was mid-sentence. The political game was at a crucial juncture. The opportunity, like the door itself, receded into the urban sprawl. He swallowed his regret and refocused on the conversation, on the tangible prizes the world offered. Each refusal, he confessed, was like a small death. The successes he accumulated, the milestones he passed in his public life, all seemed to pale in comparison to the richness of that one childhood hour in the garden. The memory of it didn't fade with time. On the contrary, it grew more luminous, more achingly desirable as the realities of his chosen life, the compromises, the pressures, the often hollow triumphs, became more apparent. The garden became a symbol of all that was pure, true, and effortlessly joyful, all that his ambitious worldly life was not. As he sat across from me that night, this man of power and influence, his face was etched with a sorrow so profound it seemed to emanate from his very bones. "Redmond," he said, leaning forward, his voice low and urgent, "I see it all now. I see the terrible bargain I have made. I have traded an inestimable treasure for what? For position? For the good opinion of men I scarcely respect? For a name in newspapers that will be forgotten tomorrow? I have been a diligent fool, Redmond, a cautious, pragmatic, utterly blind fool." His agitation was palpable. He paced the small private dining room, his words tumbling out, a torrent of self-reproach and desperate hope. He told me that the door had appeared to him again, only recently. He had been walking home late one night, his mind weary from a contentious parliamentary session, and there it was, clearer than ever before, in a quiet square he'd passed 1,000 times without noticing. The pull was almost unbearable, but even then, some ingrained habit of deferral, some fear of the unknown, or perhaps the sheer weight of his accumulated responsibilities had made him hesitate. He had walked on, telling himself he would return the next day. But the next day, of course, it was gone. But this time, he vowed, his eyes burning with a feverish light, this time, if I am granted one more sight of it, I will not fail. I swear to you, Redmond, I will cast everything aside, my career, my duties, my very life, as the world knows it. I will go through that door and I will not look back. I will go into that garden, out of this dust and heat, out of this dry glitter. Of vanity, out of these toilsome futilities, I will go and I will never return. His conviction was absolute, almost frightening. I tried to reason with him to suggest that perhaps this garden was a powerful metaphor, a product of an overtaxed mind, a symbol of youthful ideals. But he would have none of it. For him, it was utterly, tangibly real, the only reality that truly mattered anymore. Listening to him, I found my own certainties shaken. Was he a man on the verge of a breakdown? Or was he a soul who had genuinely been offered a glimpse of something beyond our common understanding, something he had tragically, repeatedly forsaken? The pain in his voice, the desperate sincerity, was impossible to dismiss. That dinner was the last truly intimate conversation I had with Lionel Wallace. We met in public forums, exchanged polite greetings, but the veil of the successful politician had descended once more. He seemed, if anything, more driven in his work, more consumed by his public persona, perhaps in a desperate attempt to outrun the shadow of his secret longing, or perhaps, as I later wondered, to make himself worthy of one last chance. Then, not many months later, the city was startled by the news of his death. The details were sparse, a brief report in the papers. He had been found in the early hours of the morning at the bottom of an excavation site in East Kensington. They were laying a new railway line, and the area was boarded off with a high, wooden hoarding. The night watchman at the site reported a curious incident. He'd seen a well-dressed gentleman whose description matched Wallace pacing near the hoarding late the previous evening. The gentleman had paused before a small, rather insignificant service door in the wooden fence, a door, the watchman noted, that happened to be painted green. He had seemed to hesitate, to look around almost furtively. Then, with a sudden, decisive movement, he had pushed it open and stepped through into the darkness beyond. Beyond that particular green door, there was no enchanted garden. There was only a sheer drop into the deep, unfinished cutting for the railway line. Was it merely an accident? A tragic error of judgment made by a tired, overworked man in the poor light of a London evening? That was the official verdict, of course. Lionel Wallace, a victim of his own momentary carelessness. But I, who had heard his story, who had seen the desperate hunger in his eyes that night, I cannot help but wonder, did he, in that final, fateful moment, believe he had found his true door? Did the mundane, paint-smeared wood of a workman's entrance transform, in his yearning sight, into the portal of his lifelong dreams? Did he step through not into a dark pit, but, in his own mind at least, into the eternal sunshine of his lost garden? These are questions without answers, questions that hover at the edge of understanding. We live our lives, Redmond, you and I, by the light of common day. We navigate by the maps of logic and tangible reality. But perhaps there are other maps, other doors, visible only to those with a certain kind of sight, a certain kind of ache in their soul. Wallace's life, so successful by worldly standards, was, by his own reckoning, a profound failure, a series of missed appointments with his own deepest happiness. Whether his door was a tangible gateway or a potent symbol of all he had renounced, its call was real enough to shape his existence and, ultimately, to lead him to its end. His story remains, with me, a haunting reminder of the delicate, often perilous balance between the life we build and the life that dreams within us. Wallace's life, so successful by worldly standards, was, by his own reckoning, a profound failure, a series of missed appointments with his own deepest happiness. Whether his door was a tangible gateway or a potent symbol of all he had renounced, its call was real enough to shape his existence and, ultimately, to lead him to its end. His story remains with me, a haunting reminder of the delicate, often perilous balance between the life we build and the life that dreams within us. And with those poignant reflections from Redmond, we come to the end of Lionel Wallace's enigmatic story, H.G. Wells' The Door in the Wall. It's a tale that certainly leaves you with a lingering sense of melancholy, doesn't it? That powerful image of a door, a fleeting chance for a different kind of happiness, repeatedly appearing and then forsaken in the name of what society deems important: ambition, career, duty. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the doors in our own lives, those moments of potential joy, or perhaps a call to a different path that we might dismiss as impractical, as childish fancy, or simply because the timing doesn't seem right. Wallace's tragedy, perhaps, wasn't just his final, fatal misstep, but the lifetime of turning away from something his soul deeply yearned for. Was the garden real? Was it a figment of a powerful imagination, a symbol of lost innocence, or something else entirely? Wells leaves that beautifully, achingly ambiguous, forcing us to look within for our own interpretations. What do you think? Is it better to pursue the tangible successes of the world, or to chase those elusive glimpses of an inner paradise, even if they lead us down uncertain paths? These are the kinds of questions that great literature invites us to ponder, and The Door in the Wall certainly gives us much to consider about our own choices and the quiet longings of the human heart. Thank you so much for joining us on English Podcast for this journey into H.G. Wells' poignant tale. We hope it gave you something to reflect upon. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow lover of stories. We always love hearing from you, so feel free to leave your thoughts on this story or suggestions for future episodes in the comments section or on our social media. Until next time, I'm Alex. May you always have the courage to at least peek when a curious door appears in your own wall. Take care and happy listening.